Yo, what up, dudes? So, Robbie Rowland here. We're going to be breaking down Jacob deGrom and Luke Weaver. Luke's a good friend of mine, and I just got off the phone with him. We were talking a little bit about some deGrom commonalities and kind of where he's progressing moving forward. But this video of him here, I think, is in 2018 Cardinal spring training, if I'm not mistaken. deGrom, this is from last year. So, right off the bat, we're going to take them right into their leg lift. You're going to see that deGrom initializes some forward momentum pre-peak leg lift. Okay, so what I mean by that is that his body is going to start moving down the mound before his leg lift reaches that top capacity. Whereas you're going to see Luke Weaver here, he's going to pretty much stay in that Nolan Ryan approach, if you will, that he's not going to initiate any forward momentum until he reaches that peak leg lift. So you're going to see how he kind of gets into that coil here, and then that's going to drop him into his drive phase, right? So he's almost kind of just putting a lot of emphasis on just throwing that whole booty towards home plate. And I know these aren't synced up right off the bat. They're not synced up that great. But as you can see, deGrom, he's moving forward pre-peak leg lift. That's hard to say. And then I also want you to kind of notice that the head posture is going to give us a really good indication of these things as well. So Weaver, who's going to be able to control head posture, pretty much stay in stacked position with that drive leg, whereas deGrom, his head posture is going to kind of be consciously moving forward. So remember, we're like a snake, right? So if you picture a snake, wherever the head goes for the snake, the body's going to go. And this is kind of where I was going with the conversation with Weave, was that if we can initiate a little bit of forward momentum, the body's going to follow in the sense of getting into an accelerated rate approaching front foot strike, which I think is something that deGrom does extremely well, accelerating into front foot strike. So you'll see that his head posture is kind of 60-40, 65-35 here, which is going to initiate him to move and accelerate into that drive phase. Whereas again, just kind of looking at the posture of Luke here, he's cautiously staying back, giving his arm more time. My theory, and essentially what I kind of talk about a lot, is athleticism. So this move that deGrom pulls here, with that head posture, is something that he's allowed to pull off and allow it to be an extreme benefit for him because he's an athletic dude. He has repeatable mechanics. There's simplicity in his arm path and so on and so forth. Luke's probably one of the best athletes that I've ever met, and that's kind of why I want to encourage him with something like this. At the same time, he's a stud, like both these dudes. I would never, it's funny because I would never like sit there and say like, hey, you need to do this and this and this differently. Maybe what Weave does here in his delivery obviously makes him who he is, and that's a big league pitcher, but you can kind of just see the difference. Now, the tricky part is, as an instructor on my end, you're not going to take a deGrom video like this and talk about his head and say, little Timmy, the 13-year-old that's just starting to pitch more, like you're not going to do that, because what happens for a kid, right, is he speeds and rushes down the mound because there's over anxious, there's over rotation, premature, disconnection, all these things. You're just simply not going to give your arm enough time to get up. And this is where I think Weave and I were talking about on the phone was, deGrom made some adjustments with his arm path, which we can kind of sit and argue, like, did he make the adjustments with his arm path, or did his body kind of just organize himself differently now that he's kind of accelerated his body into front foot plant? Again, you kind of just look Weave here, he's constantly giving his arm time to get going. But, we're going to take so this video is going to be a little bit of slower motion at peak leg lift. Just notice how deGrom's accelerating into his drive phase. That head posture kind of moving forwards and allow more acceleration, right? So his drive phase he's getting into drive phase with added acceleration and momentum already, whereas Weave, he's getting into his drive phase, more so focused on ground connection, staying back, applying force, and then going. And I think what Weave does extremely well is that he relies so much on, that separation and creating separation and having such a good amount of hip internal rotation capacity. And as you see there, with that counter rotated trunk and the hips going, that he's just creating such a crazy amount of stretch, and he's got such a good arm that he's able to throw at high power outputs. Again, looking at deGrom here, the forward momentum, the head accelerates himself, and he's able to control that posture the whole time. Still see how kind of in the beginning of the drive phase, it's forward. Notice how as he enters it, all right, and gets more closer to front foot strike, that head's going to stay more center now, and he's allowed to go. So once he comes down to weight bearing foot plant, he has force going into that lead leg, which he has the stability to accept that force and catapult himself off that. You see a lot of guys who come into weight bearing foot plant and their head's over here, which disconnects them from their arm, so then they have to generate more power with that throwing arm instead of allowing that to occur naturally, and the body can occur naturally. So here's Weave. You'll see a little bit of forward momentum with that drive phase, controlled momentum there, and boom. Okay, so there's a pretty good visual right there of the common position that we're seeing, right? Like, I mean, they're so good and they're so athletic, they're so mobile that they're able to accomplish something like this, where you see Luke's got a little bit more internal rotation capacity of the hips there, but all the same, counter rotated, arm up, holding glove side direction, strong with that front leg, elongated trail leg. See that the hips are already going, so you see like a 45, and then you see the stretch, right? That separation from essentially the trunk and the pelvis going. So now you create this. So then the next move for both of them is to just snap that rubber band, and then boom, and they both are extremely athletic, so they're able to be consistent at release, and repeatability is pretty freaking fire. So yeah, that was cool. That was the one position that I freaking wanted to show you guys, that I didn't even accomplish that in the video that I made. All right, well, hopefully that did something cool for your day. I don't know, but as always, you can check out more of my stuff on this YouTube channel, but you don't have to, I guess, but I would like you to. So cool, guys. Alrighty then, until next time, see you later. Big gulps, huh?